This episode is completely fan-written. All suggestions were taken from our Reddit page. So submissions will appear like this. This is a 2007 Aston Martin V8 Vantage in manual. And if there's no oil under a British car, there's no oil in it.
This is a fan's world. This is a fan's world.
Aston Martin V8 Vantage, the car you buy yourself as a reward after your first prostate exam. Bumper 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 bumper. The only Bond movie ever to feature a V8 Vantage was The Living Daylights, and that car was a 1985 V8 Vantage Volante. When that particular type of Vantage was born in 1977, it was labeled Britain's first supercar, as it could beat some Ferraris at the time. With a title like that, and with its Hollywood lineage, Aston Martins are machines that were designed to have to live up to a giant, seemingly impossible legend, like Duke Nukem Forever, or the next Apple product. But can this information age V8 Vantage live up to the legends that came before it? 2007 Aston Martin V8 Vantage. The car for the guy who spends $5,000 on building a custom PC, only to use it to play Skyrim with nude mods. The Aston Martin Vantage, or what your Teaboo friend dreams about trading in his Mini for. This is a car that looks stunning on the outside. To the unsuspecting roadgoer, anyone driving one would have to be a rich, classy, and the kind of person that leisurely browses style blogs. Yet much like the crumbling empire that spawned it, it hid a terrible secret. Most of its insides were taken from the imperialistic campaigns. For Britain, that was the Orient. For Aston Martin, it was Jaguar and Volvo. Do you live in a middle-class suburban neighborhood bordering towns with strips of McMansions? If so, then you'll likely spot this Vantage piloted by Oakleyed 30-somethings who will idle in your local community college's parking lot trying desperately to pick up any semblance of womanhood that he sees. While in his own mind he is channeling Jeff Winger, he doesn't realize that he comes off perpetually as Pierce, something that isn't helped by his ever-growing bald spot and collection of extra-large button-ups from Foreman Mills. Besides, everyone will think he's just driving a Ford anyway. Aston Martin, for when your upper lip isn't quite stiff enough. The official car for those who order extra-large strength toupee glue off of some website with broken links. Times New Roman, and horny teen sluts wanna fuck ads lining the bottom of the page. Aston Martin V8 Vantage originally retailed for $110,000 when new. This model year goes for about half that. Plus you get to hear, "Oh, I guess you don't have DB9 money." V8 Vantage, a Chrysler Crossfire for the upper class. I commented this while pooping.
I like it in the butt.
I can barely afford my V8 Vantage, so instead of buying an exhaust, I just pulled out the fuse that makes it quiet when I'm driving it around town. I'm a retired doctor. Roger Moore gives me wood. Should have made this thread on 4chan. The car for Charles. Charles is from Ohio, drinks Earl Grey, thinks Newcastle is the best beer, says he's going to the pub when he's really going to Applebee's. Aston Martin, the official car of business administration and accidentally leaving your paycheck sit openly on a table when you expect company. This car is just Gatsby with tires. You just wanted to give the owner of this Vantage a quick word of appreciation, or the guy nod. You know, the guy nod, the wordless masculine sign that has existed since the dawn of testosterone. But this guy is dying to talk to you about his car. He never gets the chance to talk to it about it. He never gets the chance to talk about it. His friends don't get it, his wife doesn't get it, and his coworkers don't care enough to ask him about that fob that he always leaves sitting on his desk on purpose. "Oh, you drive an Aston Martin?" "Why, yes. Yes, I do. New best friend." Fancy boats. The official car of, "Sorry, kiddo. Can't make it to your play. Have a meeting. But here's $20. My dress socks are pregnant." You know, I dated a guy who drove an Aston Martin. Women for the past 100 years have been doing a really good job of trying to convince the world that we aren't just attracted to power and money. When our ancestors friend-zoned Ugmug and his horrible spear-throwing, wobbly stone hut and weak chin for Mogmog, and his collection of saber-toothed tiger pelts and the cave faces northwest onto the stream, a car can bring us back to that mindset. When women see an Aston Martin, we struggle to push down the billions of years of evolution screaming into our ears. Financial stability. Private school for Mog Jr. So we give into the peacock feathers and plunge headfirst into a relationship. How does the relationship play out? Well, great at first. I mean, honey, look at him. Seriously, look at him. Aston Martin. My God, he's perfect. Well, except for that one thing. But I mean, come on, what's that one thing compared to everything else you have available? The official car brand for people who want to be James Bond, but are really just James May. The Aston Martin is as pretty as the Duchess of Cambridge, but the mechanicals remind you that royalty is just another word for inbreeding. 2007 Aston Martin Vantage. Because I got divorced and we split the money from selling the house, I went on Auto Trader one night, searched for cars I thought would get me laid, and sorted by lowest price first. 2007 Aston Martin Vantage, the official car of that guy at that car meet who just realized that vehicles depreciate. He'll go on about how he bought a bespoke British luxury car for the price of a Toyota Camry, but he won't mention that he'll need to shell out the cost of another Camry just to keep this thing running. 2007 Aston Martin V8 Vantage, the sidekick of the sports car world. Behind the spotlight of the DBS, the smaller Vantage holds the archetype of a quintessentially British sports car. James Bond exploits don't need to serve as an advertisement for the Vantage. The owners know of the greatness of the car to begin with. When someone sees you roll up in a Vantage and sees the silver wing-crested Aston Martin above the trademark grille, they'll understand immediately. You don't want the car for the image, as that of a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. No, you want it for the car itself. Something Tavares, something Doug Sloppy Seconds. It's lubricated by tea and warm memories of colonization. The British shouldn't be allowed to manufacture anything requiring fluids less vicious than chilled mango chutney. Aston Martin V8 Vantage, the official car of the sun never sets on the British Empire. No, it's not a fusion coupe. You want to know what the Mustang would have looked like if Ford had done to it what they did to the rest of the lineup? Well, here it is. Is it fast? Nope. Let's face it, if you bought an Aston Martin, you already know 911s and Ferraris were going to run circles around you, but you're okay with that, because the slower you go, the more people get to look at you. And you and I both know that's the point of driving a Vantage. You want people to look at you. You want people to wonder, who is he? What does he do? How can I be like him? I wish I were clever enough to submit something. Aston Martin V8 Vantage, the Camry of supercars. Looks like this episode is just going to be about 50 different ways of saying this car is British. From 1997 all the way to 2006, the typical American house increased in value by 124%, and almost half of the houses bought in 2005 were not going to be used as a primary residence. So the country was entering 2007 rife with investment properties and vacation homes. You've run off the cliff and brought this incredibly expensive car with the exception that your safe bet real estate will be the ground beneath your feet, and you haven't looked down yet, because for all you know, you finally captured the Roadrunner. This is the height of your career, and that's what the Aston Martin V8 Vantage represents every time you get in and go for a drive. Hindsight tells you that you've lost your real estate and did some considerable downsizing, but nostalgia tells you that it was all worth it to keep the car. With all the same features of a maxed-out Toyota Camry, trying to justify the $10,000 price tag is just as difficult as trying to explain college rivalries on the basis of namesake. Because really, why are the battered and bloody dogs of the South so much better than the drunken Irishmen of the North other than the price of admission? Aston Martin V8 Vantage, the official car of no, it's not a Ford Fusion. For the fan-written episode, we picked a car that none of our fans have any experience with. The chassis code for the 2007 model is the N400. This was specific to the 2007 model until changed to the N420 in 2010. It shares its V8 with the Jaguar-developed AJ8 line, which, for perspective, was used in the 11th generation Thunderbird and Lincoln LS, which had a 3.9 liter, and in the Vantage it's a 4.3 liter. However, the 4.3 in the Vantage is assembled in Germany by Aston, not Jaguar, and it is tuned and worked over differently. The Aston assembled model also has a dry sump oiling system. The cylinder block, hedge, crankshaft, connecting rods, pistons, cams, inlets, and exhaust manifolds, lubrication system, and engine management are all unique to Aston for that matter. But it's not just the chassis code. I've seen horsepower and torque both listed as 420 in various places. This is the official car of the marijuana propaganda. In 1994, the Yankee tendrils of Ford had snuck across the pond and snatched up Aston Martin under its Premier Automotive Group. This meant a surge of investment in manufacturing operations, and by the early 2000s, renewed interest in motorsports, the fruits of which you can see in this love note to old money daredevils. In 2007, however, control of Aston Martin returned back to the Brits when Ford sold 96% of ownership to In 2007, however, control of Aston Martin returned back to the Brits when Ford sold 96% of ownership to ProDrive chairman David Richards, which begs the question, is this car, at its heart, British or American? So, the exterior features the Aston Martin 1mm dick-thick grille along with some rental car headlights and an air intake below. On the side, there is a vent that adds 10 horsepower, along with the style of a rental car. Going to the back, there is 2 rental car taillights and the Aston Martin badge of exclusivity. Inside, there is some mid-size sedan vents, along with a mid-size sedan brushed plastic center console. A few buttons here and there. On the automatic model, there would be 2 more buttons on each side of the engine start button for the transmission. Rental car leather seats and other hoopla. Rental car. Made in the final year of Ford Motor Company's ownership of Aston Martin, the 2007 Vantage was as convincingly British as Dick Van Dyke's accent in Mary Poppins. It is interesting that this car has now been produced for over 10 years, with its VH platform being around since the Vanquish in 2001. Also, this car is one of the highest take ratios of any manual in any car class, around 30 to 40%. This is going to be a long one. I'm going to stumble over some of this. The Aston Martin Vantage is a car with a bit of an identity crisis. Many consider it simply a status symbol, a garage queen that will one day be cast out for a new trophy. A car that has more in common with an old English sword on display in a museum than it does with a car. Most look at it for James Bond and the smooth bravado he brings with it, but rarely do people behind the wheel fit that description. Others see it as a race car, a 6-digit sports car with 400 horsepower, but the stance to match. The problem is all of these are wrong. The car and its chassis aren't classified as a sports car. It's a Grand Tour. It's made to be as comfortable and capable of high speeds over long distances, not sprints from one hairpin to the next. That didn't stop Aston from taking it to Nuremberg, sure, but the people that wanted speed out of the Vantage had the option of the V12 with an extra 200 horsepower. Also, this car wasn't in James Bond. That honor went to the DBS, which at the time was only a concept car. And while the DBS was built on the same VH platform as the Vantage, it was developed to be high performance from the start. But this car wasn't. Aston is a status symbol, don't get me wrong, but it isn't like a go-fast Ferrari or a crazy Uncle Lamborghini. It's understated for one. It's not in your face, it's not narcissistic. The Vantage is just another car to the inobservant, trying to get from A to B. But anybody that sees those wings, anybody that recognizes the curves and the stance of this body knows exactly what this car is for. If there's anything this car can do, it's earn respect. Not the gawking, envious respect of that guy with the 1970 Challenger down the street. Not the kind of respect he's looking for, no. And not the cool guy respect from the guy on the high school football team who nabbed the keys to his dad's GTR, even though he's lucky he could figure out how to start the thing. Lucky right up until he launch controlled through a guardrail halfway down the street. No. The Vantage brings with it sophistication and confidence. People driving a Vantage don't need to prove themselves to anyone because they know what they can do. If they wanted a fast car, they'd have a fast car. And if they wanted the loud car, they'd have a loud car. They can afford it and handle it if they wanted, probably, but there's no need to prove themselves to strangers. Like its owner, the Vantage knows exactly what it is and what it can do. And if you want to challenge that, you've got to work your way up here first, buddy. Have fun with that. Getting into an 07 Vantage is like getting into a Ford Focus. Not in the sense that the driver's seating position or his state of mind are alike, but in the sense that everything you touch feels familiar to every other forgettable car you've driven that's probably some percentage Ford parts. Pull out your key. You'll see it's the same one from a Volvo S60. Exact same. Look it up. The door handles are articulating gimmicks Ford let happen because of the chronic guilt they possess from Lincoln. The interior is decidedly Spartan. Really, it's the realization of a 3D model on an engineer's computer built with bits and bobs from the Ford empire that required Aston Martin essentials. So a bare-bones aesthetic had to be used to prevent the crime from being all too obvious. The incongruencies shine through, though, as they always do. A solid, sporty steering wheel and the air of English aristocratic elegance is spoiled when your finger hits a blinker stalk that's right out of your local rental lot's abused Fiesta. How does it handle? Uncannily well. Is that how you pronounce that? Uncannily. To be canny. How does it handle? Uncannily well. Like when you finally upgraded a car in a driving game and you feel the little satisfaction watching your car corner at physically impossible speeds. A tremendously low center of gravity, small wheels, sport tires, and stiff shocks mean that it truly slices through corners. The very opposite feeling of being in a lowered ricer bottoming out at every pothole. The brakes are great. Less fade than an 80s sitcom theme. Likely due to the large ventilated discs on display behind the tiny alloys. The handling is remarkably generic, yet stunning at the same time. Aston Martin V8 Vantage. The official car of... Why isn't anybody taking pictures of my car at Cars and Coffee? The Vantage can be described as Metallica's 8th studio album, Saint Anger. From any other band, it would have been considered a pretty good album. But given the prestige of Metallica, it was thought of as significantly mediocre. In the same way, the Vantage would stand out if it was made by a more bland and perfectly alright manufacturer. Not the iconic Bond car producer. Aston Martin V8 Vantage. A car for middle-aged tech millionaires that want a car to go along with their Blu-ray copy of Quantum of Solace. The Aston Martin V8 Vantage starter button feels like what you'd imagine those glass figurines that your grandma told you not to touch felt like. The Vantage steering is smooth, yet firm, like a sculpture of Van Damme's ass. Aston Martin. For the man who has a monocle for each eye. After Ford got caught with their dicks in the watermelon, they were forced to drop some of its groups that had accumulated over the past few years. Jaguar, Volvo, Land Rover were considered before Aston Martin's prehistoric assets were set to the guillotine. Now that Daddy Ford had abandoned them, the company was now in the hands of American bankers and Kuwaiti companies. The V8 Vantage stood out as a warm, moist band-aid of a car before being refreshed in 2008 to boost power from 380 to 420 horsepower. The V8 Vantage variants were so abundant that if you look at the list and squint, you'd swear you were looking at an order sheet for a 911. Coupe, Roadster, S-Coupe, S-Roadster, N430 Coupe, N430 Roadster, floating in the bathroom of a Birmingham pub, GT Roadster, GT Roadster, GT Roadster, GT Coupe, and the list goes on. 2007 Aston Martin V8 Vantage. I know I am slower than a 911, but you know I'm gonna get pussy. I wanna move to Miami and come in a Latino's foreskin.
Don't let the sun go down on our manuals. Automatic swing. transmissions turn automatic. We need our manuals, 'cause we've been living for a long time under the yoke of tyranny. How many girls can drive stick these days? That still means something to me. We live in one big slush box world where our conscience is a lie. Our manuals are a beautiful thing we can't let